One of the 4 Al Jazeera journalists in prison in Egypt has now been on hunger strike for 102 days. Abdullah al-Shami has been held without charge since August. Peter Greste, Mohamed Fahmy and Mohamed, meanwhile, have now been in jail for 125 days. They'll be back in court on May 3rd. They're accused of providing a platform to the outlawed Muslim Brotherhood, now declared a terrorist organization. Al Jazeera rejects all the charges. Fahmy has received a Press Freedom Award for his contribution to journalism ahead of World Press Freedom Day on May the 3rd. That's the same day he's due to appear in that Cairo court along with his colleagues. Fahmy is a dual Canadian-Egyptian citizen. The Canadian Committee for World Press Freedom has named him as its 16th recipient. We've received a handwritten letter from him that was smuggled out of Tora prison. In it, he thanks the CCWPF for that award, but wants to raise his plight and that of other silenced journalists around the world.
The news of this prestigious award was delivered to me by my fiancé and brother last week on my birthday in prison. The recognition not only brought joy, but it also lifted the morale of my 2 colleagues who I share a cell with. I must first express my gratitude to the Canadian government for standing by me and my family in these difficult times. I sat in my cell several weeks back reading in the newspaper that Foreign Affairs Minister John Baird was due to arrive in Egypt. Days later, in that same cell, I sat smiling as I learned from the newspaper that he had pressed Egyptian Foreign Minister Mohamed Fahmy for my release. I don't expect prison gates to open in response to such urgent appeals, but I strongly believe that diplomatic pressure, in addition to efforts of press freedom advocates, does send a clear message to those judging us in court. To imprison a journalist and attempt to silence his cause is not only an insult to the essence of Egypt's constitution, but also an offence to the global journalism community. The Press Freedom Award comes at a time when all I think about is how to stress the plight of many local journalists detained in Egypt, who have not received a fraction of the attention I'm getting. A key part of our defence has been to convince the judge of our professional integrity, to prove to him that we're journalists striving for the truth and not agents of terror. This award will go a long way towards making our case.
Sean McCarthy is a board member with the Canadian Committee for World Press Freedom. He joins us now live from Ottawa. Sean, how was Mohamed Fahmy chosen for this award?
Well, we've been aware of his arrest and the challenges even before he was arrested of the work that was all journalists faced in reporting on the situation in Egypt. And this award does go to a Canadian who, whether reporting at home or around the world, has advanced the cause of press freedom. And he certainly stood out in our mind as somebody not only personally, but also representing, as he said in his notes, representing others in Egypt and around the world who are threatened and beaten and imprisoned for simply trying to report on the events in their society.
What message then does this award send to journalists around the world?
Well, I think it sends a message that you're not alone, and you know, we're sitting here in Ottawa in the safety of a North American spring, and we can't be on the lines with them, but at least we can bring all the pressure that we can to bear on our own government to advocate for press freedom around the world, and hopefully on their governments to respect the rights of journalists to do their jobs.
Talking about your government, why has the Canadian government been so quiet about the case of Mohamed Fahmy?
Well, I think recently they've picked it up a little bit. Initially, they certainly were quiet, and their other governments have been more vocal in defense of press freedom. I think that the Canadian government, first off, you know, they're reluctant to get into a judicial situation and a prosecution under Egyptian laws. They had consular access to Mr. Fahmy all along, and I think provided support that way. But more recently, as he mentioned in his note, our Foreign Minister John Baird did travel to Egypt and did raise the issue with his Egyptian counterpart. So we hope that the Canadian government will be more vocal, and we hope, again, not only in this case, but more broadly, that the Canadian government will take seriously the issues of press freedom and advocate for them around the world as they do for other rights, like religious rights, where they have been more vocal.
And let's talk about this issue of press freedom. As time goes on, restrictions more and more, it seems, placed upon journalists. Instead of a freer press, we're getting a more restrictive press.
Yes.
What can be done about this growing problem?
Well, I think one thing is that we have to get the word out to the broader society how important to our fundamental freedoms the freedom of the press is. We recognize it working in the business, and often when we complain about restrictions, people think that we're simply complaining about, you know, our own issues, and they're certainly more fundamental than my own workday habits. I think it's important to keep up that pressure. It's important to get the message out. World Press Freedom Day, which you mentioned, which is Saturday, gives us an opportunity to shine the light on that. We host an annual lunch where we try to bring in diplomatic community as well as influential people in our capital, and I know people around the world are doing the same, to again send that message that this isn't simply about the narrow rights of a reporter to do a job, but a much broader, very important basic freedom that democracy depends on.
Sean, good to talk to you. Many thanks indeed. Sean McCarthy there in Ottawa. The United Nations Secretary General has met with Egypt's Foreign Minister Nabil Fahmy. Ban Ki-moon raised his concerns about the continued detention of journalists in Egypt. Our diplomatic editor James Bays has been speaking to an Egyptian journalist who's now living in exile. Yahya Ghanem had been sentenced to 2 years hard labor for allegedly receiving illegal payments from abroad. This is the message that he wants to send to the Egyptian authorities.
So my advice is the immediate release of not only Al Jazeera guys, but all the journalists. And I believe this is the right message to be sent at this critical juncture that we're going through in Egypt these days. And I believe, as I said before, that that would be the right step in the right direction to start a reconciliation in Egypt. There's no way, there's no other way than to reconcile in Egypt. And the first step is to reconcile with the media.
Well, there's plenty more information about the detained journalists at our website. Go to aljazeera.com, click on the Free AJ Staff icon on the right-hand side of the screen. That'll take you to a page dedicated to our staff and to the issue of press freedom all over the world. That's aljazeera.com.